My name is Bryson Spencer. I'm in Miss Benson's African American Literature class, English 244, Section 6, and I'm going to be discussing my impressions of this class both before and after I took the class, and the Black aesthetic as well. When I first entered African American literature, I thought the class was strictly focused on the Harlem Renaissance era and the famous African American writers and poets from that era only. I was very familiar with most of the writers and poets from that era, such as Claude McKay, Zora Neale Hurston, James Weldon Johnson, Alan Locke, and of course Langston Hughes. Although we did eventually go over the writings of many of the writers of the Harlem Renaissance era, we learned about earlier writers as well, such as William Wells Brown, Henry Highland Garnet, Victor Chagiour, and Lucy Terry. These earlier writers often told stories of how intelligent slaves were resisting tyranny in order to gain their own freedom. Henry Highland Garnet wrote an address to the slaves of America in 1848 in which he informed slaves that they needed to resist tyranny and fight for their own freedom instead of just waiting for abolitionists to free them one day. William Wells Brown wrote a story titled The Escape of Clotel in 1853 in which he tells the story of two slaves who take it upon themselves to resist tyranny by escaping to the north. In Brown's story, there is a fair-skinned woman named Clotel who is a slave who wants to escape, but she doesn't have any money. An older man-slave named William overheard Clotel talking about escaping one day and gave her all of the money he had. William told Clotel to go without him. However, Clotel would not leave him behind, so they came up with an idea in which Clotel would dress up as a slave master and William would act as her slave. Then the two of them boarded a train headed north to escape slavery. The two of them resisted tyranny together by escaping, and they proved their humanity to each other. William by giving Clotel all of his money so that she could be free alone, and Clotel by refusing to leave William behind. After taking African American literature, my impression of both African American literature and slaves has changed. I learned that African American literature dates back to an era before the Harlem Renaissance. The writings of Garnet and Brown have changed my impression of slaves as well. I learned that slaves were active participants in gaining their freedom by resisting tyranny, and that they weren't just praying and hoping the abolitionists would free them one day. The Black aesthetic, or the Black arts movement, was the artistic branch of the Black Power movement started in Harlem by writer and activist Imamu Amiri Baraka in the 1960s. Unfortunately, in 2016, there is not a definitive Black aesthetic. However, the closest thing to it would be seen in hip-hop and the Black Lives Matter movement. Many hip-hop artists such as Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole bring much awareness to the problems that we face in the Black community and the day-to-day struggles due to the system, and do their best to give back to the youth in their local communities. The reason hip-hop is not the definitive Black aesthetic in 2016 is because of rappers like Chief Keef, Future, and Young Thug. Although their songs have really catchy hooks, most of the material perpetuates the negative stereotypes that the world has towards African Americans dealing with drugs, murder, and degrading women. There needs to be a definitive Black aesthetic in 2016. With a definitive Black aesthetic, there will be less black-on-black crimes as well as police brutality towards blacks in America. Black males such as Michael Brown, Eric Gardner, and Tamir Rice might still be alive if Black hip-hop stars and writers discuss more of the problems in their communities and how we could fix them instead of talking about drinking lean, smoking weed, and buying $100,000 chains. This is a part of the reason why police officers claim that they fear for their lives when dealing with African American males. Rap music makes African American males appear violent.